did it. I watched all 6 Final Destination movies in 2 days. I watched 4 yesterday, including the brand new one. And I have some thoughts. Anyways, hello everybody and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Shay. I make content about horror movies, video games, horror TV shows, and theme parks because I live in Central Florida and I feel like it would be a crime not to. And if you're not new here, welcome back. As cheerful as I sound right now, the beginning of this video is kind of how I feel and the makeup is how I feel. Yeah. All 6 Final Destination movies in 2 days. Now, I'm sure there's somebody who's watched all, 5 of them in one day, and I probably would have been able to do all 5 of them if I wasn't going to see the 6th one that night. I tried so hard to get through as many as I could before I went to go see Bloodlines. But today we're going to do something a little bit different. I am going to be reviewing Bloodlines. Now, I originally had wanted to start a series where I would watch, every movie from one specific franchise and then kind of tell you my thoughts on each installment. That's a lot of work. If yesterday and today didn't prove that to me, that's a lot of work. Not saying that it's not something I might do in the future, but I feel like it works for this because instead of just doing a regular one-off movie review of a new movie that just came out, I'm going to be doing that and also talking about the series as a whole. So it's kind of a 2-in-1 on this, and I just thought it would be a little bit interesting. I'm going to be talking a lot, so be prepared. It's nothing new. But yeah, today we are going to be talking about Final Destination, the Final Destination series as a whole, and mostly we're going to be talking about Final Destination Bloodlines, which just came out last weekend. So if you are ready to get started on this review, buckle your seatbelt, keep your trays in the upright position, and let's get into this creepy critique. Okay, so I'm hoping with you being here that you know what Final Destination is. I'm hoping that's the whole plan, is that you guys already are familiar with the franchise. That's why you're here to watch a review of the 6th one. But if not, let me give you a little bit of a rundown. Final Destination is a movie that was released in 2000 and starred Devon Sawa and Sean William Scott. If you don't know who either of those people are, the little boy from Casper, or Idle Hands, if you've seen that movie. He wasn't a little boy, he was older there. And Stifler from American Pie. So one of those two should ring a bell for you. And if they don't, then oh well. Oh, also, if you watch the Chucky series, Devon Sawa was in that a million times. He's played a million characters in that show. So if you watch the Chucky series, you know Devon Sawa. But it came out in 2000, and it was a relatively new concept. I mean, had never been done before. A slasher movie where the slasher is more of a force of nature and less a big imposing figure like Jason and Freddy and Michael Myers. So I'm going to give you the rundown of the Final Destination movies because I'm going to tell you right now, all 6 of these movies have all of this stuff in it. I will give you a rundown on that, and then we'll talk about Bloodlines because I have some thoughts about Bloodlines, honestly. So the Final Destination movies always start out with one particular character getting ready to go on a trip of some sort, or getting ready to go, at a specific event. There are 2 movies where they're at a specific event. Gonna run down what each opening sequence is. So of course the original, we had the plane crash. The second one, we had the pileup on the interstate. The third one, we had the roller coaster crash. The fourth one, we had the NASCAR nonsense. The fifth one, we had the fifth one, we had the bridge collapsing and the bus falling into the ocean. And then the 6th one, we have the Skyview restaurant, which we'll talk about in a second. So every single Final Destination opens with a character getting ready to do something where there's going to be a lot of people and there's potential for danger. And this character is going through the motions, but then they start to feel this really weird feeling. They start to notice things more and more, and then disaster ensues. The people are getting impaled. People are getting thrown out across the room. People are getting their heads crushed. People are getting crushed by motors. It's crazy. That's how the series starts. And just when you're watching this incredibly horrible disaster and, kind of crying a little bit on the inside, it cuts to the person's face and they are suddenly realizing that that was a vision, that they had a prophetic vision. So they start to freak out. They start to tell everybody, like, we need to get out of this, except for the sixth movie, but we'll get to it. We need to get out of this area. And of course, people are like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? What do you mean? Then they finally get out of the area, and then the accident happens. And that's how every single Final Destination movie starts. Every single movie in the series. It never veers from that. So I think that's, a constant that you can always expect with the Final Destination movies. After the protagonist has saved the rest of the characters from imminent doom, they now have to go through life watching as each person gets killed one by one, because death is the slasher here. Like, not a Grim like from The Sims, not like Grim from The Sims, like actual death, like the force of nature is the actual slasher here. And Death is pissed off that this particular protagonist basically like stopped its plan. Like, everybody has a timer on their life, everybody has a place where they're supposed to be to die, and these people interfered with that. So now Death is like, I gotta get creative. And you get to watch in every single movie people getting offed in very bizarre and wild ways. And they get more and more over the top as each installment. Like, I would say this installment had some of the most over the top deaths in the entire franchise. Bloodlines had some of the most over the top deaths. And it comes, so then what ended up happening is that Tony Todd shows up in 4 of the 6 of them to basically be like, hey, you guys are dealing with this thing, and it's gonna take you, and I mean, there's really not much you can do. But you could kill somebody and steal their life, or you could die and then be brought back, and it'll skip you. So he gives them that little bit of insight. So then the protagonist and at least 2 other characters are now panicked, trying to figure out how to, stop this, coming up with all these different scenarios. And then eventually at least one of the 2 characters gets picked off, except for the third one. All 3 characters survive. Hallelujah. But at least one of the 3 characters gets picked off. And then it's just the last 2 characters trying to fend for themselves. And something happens where it seems like the whole thing is done. And the movie kind of wraps up with this little, like, almost a happy ending. It feels like it's going to be good and everything's going to be great. And usually the protagonist starts to realize that there's signs from their original vision, meaning Death's not done with them. And at the end, it's typically implied that they died. So that's every single Final Destination movie in a nutshell. Every single Final Destination movie acts the same exact way. You pretty much know what you're getting when you sit down for a Final Destination movie, which isn't always bad. It isn't always bad. But now let's talk about Bloodlines. Now, Bloodlines is the most recent installment. It came out, like I said, last weekend. It came out on May 16th, 2025. And it is, for a little bit of sadness, it is Tony Todd's last film. And if you don't know who Tony Todd is, he is an absolute legend in horror. He's Candyman, the original Candyman. So, big loss last year. Really, really broke my heart, So it was nice to see him play this role one more time. And the way they wrapped up his role was, well, we'll talk about it. It was beautiful. It was beautiful the way they wrapped up his role. So this movie, as of right now, has some of the best reviews of any Final Destination movie, which is weird to me. It's got a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. Again, just like with Sinners, I do expect this to fall as it becomes more accessible to people. I do expect people to be like, what are you guys talking about? This movie isn't good. It's a Final Destination movie. It does have a 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb. IMDb tends to be a little bit rougher on the movies. And the synopsis is as followed. Plagued by a violent and recurring nightmare, a college student heads home to track down the one person who might be able to break the cycle of death and save her family from the grisly demise that inevitably awaits them all. So this movie is very interesting spin on the Final Destination lore. It's creative. It's a little bit more up to date. So let's talk about Bloodlines. So Final Destination Bloodlines opens with a couple in the 60s on their way to a surprise. The couple's name is Paul and Iris. I'm pretty sure I'll be able to remember everybody's names in this movie, but in the other movies, I don't remember everybody's names. I'm sorry. There's a lot of people. So Paul and Iris are headed to this surprise. Paul is trying to surprise Iris with something, and then he has her get out of the car and then takes off her blindfold, and she looks up, and there is a giant tower. It looks like, I thought it was like the Space Needle for like a second. And it also kind of looks like the Stratosphere and in Las Vegas, which now I'm going to be so like honest with you guys right now. I am terrified of heights. So this opening sequence was my nightmare put on screen. I am terrified of heights. For context, I went to St. Augustine, and there's a lighthouse in St. Augustine that's really famous. If you've seen Ghost Adventures, you've definitely seen that lighthouse. We were going to go up. Me, my mom, and the rest of my family were going to go upstairs. I got about to the 3rd floor, and I looked out the window and realized how high up we were, and I turned around and walked back down. I couldn't even go to the top of a lighthouse. That is how scared of heights I am, which is very strange because I do enjoy roller coasters. But I like launch coasters better than like the ones that, have the incline lift, the lift hill. Anyways, that was just a little bit side tangent, but this was my nightmare. This opening sequence was my nightmare. So what it turns out is that is actually a restaurant, and it's a brand new restaurant that's opened. It's very swanky. Only the best of the best can get there. And Paul and Iris are really not the best of the best. Like, Iris even says, do I look okay? Like, she's wearing I thought her dress was very cute, personally. Like, for that era, I thought her dress was very cute. But it definitely was not up to that venue standards. Like, that venue was like swanky, and it would not have flown, which it didn't. So then they go inside, and there's an elevator, of course, that's got to take you all the way up to the top. And the elevator is stuffed full. I mean, stuffed full. But the bellhop elevator guy is like, no, come on. He says to Paul and Iris, we got room for like at least 2 more. Room for 2 more. And this elevator was jam-packed. It was like a can of sardines. That's all I can say. It was like a can of sardines, just jam-packed. So they go up, and the one thing Iris does is she looks at the maximum capacity, which is something that I tend to do when I get into elevators with a lot of people. I look at the maximum capacity and I go, do we exceed that? Most of the time we don't. It's very hard to exceed that maximum capacity, but oh yeah, that's something that comes to mind, especially when you're going from that height. But there's another caveat with this elevator. It's not a regular elevator. It's glass. The floor is glass. You can see out front, it's glass. It's glass. Yeah. So you get to watch as you just lift from the ground into the sky. And maybe for some people that is like the coolest thing in the world, but not for me. Not for me. I hate that. I hate that. So they finally get to the top of the building, and they get to the restaurant, and Paul and Iris go up to the maitre d', and they're like, hey, he's like, hey, I'm on the list. I made a reservation. And the maitre d' looks at them, and he's like, let me check. And he opens the book, and he goes, I'm sorry, we don't have you on the list. Bye, get out of here. And Paul's like, but like we talked to, I think his name was Jake. I talked to Jake, and he set it up. And then the guy's like, we let Jake go this morning. So it's very clear that they were trying to have this really swanky upscale business, and Paul and Iris did not fit that, like I said. So then as the maitre d' leads another couple away to their table, Iris is like, let's just go sit at the bar. Like, when he's not looking, let's just go over there. So they go over, they sit at the bar, they're getting ready to order their food, and Iris starts to take a little walk towards the glass windows, because most of this, first of all around the restaurant is glass windows, and then the dance floor is glass with nothing underneath it. Okay. So the movie really plays into, if you have a fear of heights, this is going to make you feel the fear of heights. And it definitely played heavily into that, heavily. As she's looking out, she looks out at the city, and she sees how high up they are. She looks down a lot, and they do a lot of those shots where it's kind of like warped almost, like, you can almost see like the ground's like pushing away from the camera. And she is freaked the heck out, so much so that she starts to get sick. she runs off. She goes into a she runs off. She like almost runs into all these people. Then she goes off to the corner to compose herself. And a singer comes over, and the singer's like, hey, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, no, I'm just a little bit nauseous, whatever. And the singer's like, well, how far along are you? And Iris is like, what are you talking about? And then she goes like, how far along are you? And she's like, I'm not sure yet. So Iris is pregnant. And so she's like, I haven't told my boyfriend yet, and I'm really scared that he's going to be mad. And then she's like, oh, it's going to be okay. You're going to have a great time with, you're going to be a great mom, blah blah blah. Nice. She's being nice to her. Then she turns to a little boy who's sitting there, her son, and she tells him that they got one more song left because she's one of the singers from the band. She's like, we got one more song and then we'll be leaving. And, little boy's playing with his train, he's having a good time and everything's fine. So then Paul comes over and he's like, hey, you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm fine. And he's like, let's go outside and stand on the observation deck. Why? I would have broken up with this man. This would have been the end of our relationship. Why? It didn't seem like she liked it. It didn't seem like she was like, oh, this is awesome. This is cool. She looked terrified the whole time they were up there. And if it were me, I would have been like, if I were in Paul's shoes, I would be like, okay, let's, you know what? They didn't let us in. Let's go eat somewhere else and on the ground. And I would have left. But granted, if she had left, we'll get to it. So they go on the observation deck, and there are two things that are happening at the same time. There is a woman who is leaning out over the balcony of the observation deck because reasons, and her hat flies off. And then there is a little kid throwing pennies off of the observation deck, and he's a little shit. I'm not even gonna mince words here. He's a little shit. Yes. I didn't like him. Didn't like that kid. He was very, very rude, very, very disrespectful, and it seemed like his parents didn't even care. Go figure. So then Paul, Iris is really starting to notice some weird stuff, but then Paul is like, I really, I want to talk, I wanted to ask you something. And she's like, oh, I need to tell you something. And he's like, oh, you go first. And she's like, no, you. And so he tells her how much he loves her, how he wants to spend the rest of his life with her. And then he gets down on one knee and he pulls out a ring and proposes. And she's like, so they're like, she's like, are you okay with having us in your life? And he's like, us. And then she's like, kind of looks at him and is like, yeah, and he's like, you're pregnant? And she's like, yeah. And he gets really excited, like he should get. And so then he asks her what her answer is, and she says yes. And then the people that are up on the observation deck clap, and then they decide to go back in and start celebrating. And this is where all hell breaks loose. So the band is playing the song Shout. I'll never listen to this song the same way again. This song is definitely now going to be, it's going to be on the list of great usage of music in horror movies for me. It's going to be high up on the list because wow, this song was brutal for me, really. So the band is cutting up. They're doing their thing. The guy is like, going off, make me want to shout. And everybody's jumping around, everybody's dancing, having a good time. And Iris and Paul are there too. But then at one point, Iris notices that the glass beneath their feet is starting to crack. So she backs up and she tries to get off the dance floor. And when she gets off the dance floor, she goes to say something to somebody, and then the dance floor just completely shatters, and everybody falls through the dance floor. And this is where we get our opening sequence finally. And it's brutal. There are broken bones. There are people getting impaled. There's one part where the valets are standing at their little station and they're playing the song Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, and then bodies just start falling from the sky, that's one thing I will say about the Final Destination series. They know how to use music to sort of put an asterisk on the things that they're doing. So after so people are start falling, and then everybody's trying to figure out how to get out. Everybody's panicking. At one point they go towards the staircase, and that little shit of a kid pushes everybody out the way, and he's like, children first, and then the staircase breaks in half, and Iris is stuck up there still. So the whole thing, so the building is starting to crack in half. it's getting really, really bad. You know, like it is starting to crack in half. It's getting really, really bad. And people that weren't on the dance floor are now being thrown against the windows and thrown out the windows. So then one of the like, I think it was the maitre d', he says to her that, we need to get to you need to get to the elevator. And she's like, I'm not going in the elevator. And so he runs over, the elevator's at capacity, and he's begging them to let him in. And they refuse to let him in, of course. Of course, now the bellhop says that there's too many people when there really wasn't too many people. Well, there was actually a lot more people. So then, as they're trying to leave, the elevator's trying to leave. The guy is reaching, getting in the elevator, and he gets the bellhop closes the doors, and he gets caught between the doors. And then the elevator goes down, and that guy just gets sliced right in half. It is awful. So then Iris finds that little boy that was the singer's son, that, and she decides she's going to try to figure out how to get out of there, but there really is no way. And so she ends up falling, and her ring gets stuck on like a bar, and I'm pretty sure she degloved it. I looked away because I don't like degloving. I'm pretty sure she degloved it, and then she fell. It finally broke off, and she fell, and she was impaled. And then, of course, when she fell and she was impaled, it cuts to the person having the vision. Except what Bloodlines does is that the person having the vision is not Iris. It's her granddaughter, Stephanie. So she was sleeping in class, and she woke up. She's been having this dream about the sky view, having this dream about her grandma being like dying. Basically she's been having the vision that her grandmother had. Now her grandmother didn't die. Obviously she's there. She's there, so her grandmother didn't die. So she's like, okay, I need to figure this out. The dream was consuming her, and it was ruining her life. She was actually going on academic probation because she wasn't doing well in school. So she decides that she's going to go back home more at the request of her roommate, because her roommate was tired of her waking up screaming, and was like, just go home and figure this all out. So she goes home, and she wants to just find out a little bit more about Grandma Iris. And her dad's there, and her dad's happy to see her. And then when she brings up Grandma, he's like, no, I got rid of your mom's stuff because, after she left us, we didn't need to keep it anymore. So for context, their mother, Darlene, is gone. She's not dead. She just left them. So then her brother Charlie comes down. So Stephanie is the name of the granddaughter. Sorry, I forgot to say her name. So her little brother Charlie comes downstairs, and he says he's going to go to the cousin's house. And Stephanie's like, oh, you know what? Why don't I drive you there? And her dad's like, hey, if you guys go over there, don't ask about Grandma Iris. Just don't mention it. So she's like, yeah, okay, whatever. So they get over there, and the very first thing she notices is that her cousins are really standoffish with her, which kind of sets up the dynamic that she just hasn't really been involved in any of her family's life since she went to college. She used to be really close to her cousin Julia, and Julia won't even talk to her, really. Like, she just brushes her off. But there are 3 siblings in this family. Yeah, there's Eric, Julia, and Bobby. They are the 3 kids in this family. And then she goes over, she says hi to her aunt, and then her uncle comes in, who is Iris's son. And so she starts asking questions about Iris. She says, I'm having this dream about the Skyview restaurant, and I don't know what it means. I need to understand, and when they hear this, they're like, mm-mm. So Howard says, your grandmother is a very, very sick person. She was obsessed with death. As kids, she basically tortured your mother and me, constantly, with her paranoia. She wouldn't let us do anything. She saw 100 ways we could die, in one moment. And he goes, and then after we went, we cut her off, she started sending us letters of obituaries and pictures of bodies, gruesome accidents. And, he's like, we just, you don't need to be messing around with her. Just leave it alone. But Stephanie's like, no, I can't leave it alone. It's literally ruining my life. This dream is ruining my life. I need to figure out what is going on here. So her aunt is like, all right, I didn't tell you, you didn't hear from me, but don't look in the bottom drawer in the dining room. Or living room. I don't know. It was one of those two rooms. So Stephanie goes over there. She opens the bottom drawer and she finds a letter with Iris's address on it. So then she goes to Iris's house. Iris's house, like, okay, if you've seen Halloween 2018, you know how Laurie Strode's house was like a fortress? Iris's house puts hers to shame. Iris's house is so ridiculously like protected. There are spikes everywhere outside. There's barbed wire everywhere. There's a lot of stuff that's like there to protect her. So then when Stephanie gets there, she goes to the call box. She says to Iris, she's like, "Hey, I'm your granddaughter." And Iris is like, "Okay." And she lets her in, opens the gate and lets her in. So she has to leave all of her stuff. She has to leave her keys and her phone and her, anything. She has to empty her pockets. So then she goes into the cabin and Iris is definitely going through it, which I don't blame her because I'm sure she's probably been dealing with this for a very long time. Actually, she has. She's been dealing with it for decades. So she then starts to explain to Stephanie what she experienced after Stephanie tells her about the dream. And she brings out this book that has, from what I could tell, and I could be wrong about this, it looked like it had every single thing that's ever happened in any Final Destination movie in it. It really did. It looked like it had everything. So it kind of insinuated to me, at least from what I could see, that all of this goes back to Iris. She's the original, basically. She's the one that was supposed to die, and it's just been skipping her this whole time because she's locked down and protected. And at one point, she does accidentally almost set like a plant on fire, and she's like, "Oh no, you don't!" And she like throws something and it goes away. And she tells Stephanie, like, yeah, death is finally gonna get me. I have cancer, and it's like they said I have maybe months to live, weeks to live, months to live. So Stephanie hears about all this and she starts to get really scared. She looks at the book. She's like, I want nothing to do with it. She runs out of the house. And Iris is like, she goes to the doorway and she's like, screaming for her. She's like, "Stephanie, you have to listen to me. You have to like believe me." And so then she remembers what she drew in her book that she's holding, and it was a picture of how she was going to die. And she realized this was the moment that she was going to die. So she walked outside. She gives Stephanie the book and then she's like, "Well, Grandma, I don't know why you came outside." And she goes, "Well, sometimes seeing is believing." And then she gets impaled through the jaw. Yep. So that happens. And Stephanie, of course, is traumatized, and she's now left with more questions than answers, but she's panicked. So they go to the funeral and it's really, like she's really anxious and sad. But then her mom shows up, and her mom rides up in a trailer, and her Uncle Howard is like, "Oh, I didn't even expect her to come. Like, I did email her to let her know that, Mom passed, but I didn't even expect her to come." So he goes over and says hi to her, but Stephanie doesn't want anything to do with her. She's like, she left me when I was a kid. We're done. So she tells Charlie, her brother, that she's going to go home because she doesn't want to be a part of that. She doesn't want to be around her mom. And Charlie reads her for filth and is like, "Well, you left us too, basically. Like, you don't care. You don't come around. You only come around when it's convenient for you." And, just showing that she doesn't really care about her family. So then Stephanie goes home and the rest of the family go over to Uncle Howard's for a barbecue. So everybody's there having a good time. But this barbecue is being set up as, something is going to happen. If you've seen the Final Destination movie, you know that death is setting this up now. So the main thing is that a glass falls from the top of the bar and shatters on the bar. And as Bobby is cleaning it up and brushing everything in there, a piece of glass falls in the ice. So the ice that they put in their drinks, there's a piece of glass in there. Now, my first thought was that somebody was going to choke on the glass. And there is one part where they're all drinking and Julia starts to choke and she spits out her drink and everything like that. And then she says that there was a bug in her drink. And we're like, "Oh, okay." So the whole time, they finally show you that the father, Howard, he had the glass in his glass. And so I just kept thinking this man's going to drink it and it's going to cut up his throat. But I was like, that's not extreme enough for Final Destination. That's not extreme enough. So at one point, Bobby and Charlie are bouncing on the trampoline. Howard comes, Bobby and Charlie bouncing on the trampoline. Everybody's just having a good time. And then, like, the trampoline rips and it freaks everybody out. And somebody knocks over knocks over Howard's glass into the grass. And so when the trampoline rips, Bobby actually falls through it. And Bobby's like, I'm okay, I'm okay. There's like, he has no injuries. He's like, I'm okay. So then Howard's like, oh my goodness, like, you gotta be careful, gotta fix that trampoline. As he's walking, the glass is pointed up in the ground and he steps right on it. So he steps on it, he's hopping around, he's screaming, and then he falls to the ground, and then, just like Death be doing, it just knocks over some random stuff, and it hits the button for the lawnmower to come on, and the lawnmower zooms over and slices up his head. In front of everybody. Everybody gets to watch this man get sliced and diced. So now Death has claimed its second victim. And everybody's like shocked because it was such a weird thing to happen. But so they're like, what the heck just happened? Like what just happened? Stephanie does make it over there to the house because she starts to see visions of what's going to happen. And she's like, oh my gosh, she's going to get killed. So she gets over there pretty much when he gets killed. So then after that happens, Stephanie starts going through Iris's book and she starts to find a pattern, and she looks at everything and she says that Iris saved everybody that night, because I forgot to mention that Iris does tell her that the night that she had that vision, she actually went inside and got everybody to leave. So no one died that night. Nothing happened. So she completely cheated Death. Like completely, like she cheated a lot of people out of their deaths. So, so like there's all these names and their family trees, and I wish that I could have seen more of that, because I'm really thinking they're insinuating that everything is connected to Iris. Like, I don't know. Somebody watching this might be like, no, that's not what they were getting at. But I feel like that's what they were getting at, because there was just so much stuff on that. And I'm like, they can't just not be talking about the original, like the series as a whole. Like, this is all linking back to that. But it was subtle. Like, they weren't like in your face, like, oh, remember when Alex died in Flight 180? I mean, they didn't, there was some mentions of 180, but it wasn't constant, it wasn't like in your face. So Stephanie then decides to tell the entire family that we're all going to die, basically. The people who are blood related, shared DNA with Iris, are going to die. So she's like, so she's going through, she's explaining everything. She's telling them that every single person who Iris saved that night went on to live, regular lives, but died, and they had kids and grandkids that were never supposed to exist. So basically, like, they're an anomaly. They're not supposed to be there. So Death is pissed. So then she says, if I'm right about this whole thing, Eric, you're next. And Eric is like, psh, whatever. They get really mad at her, the family, and honestly, rightfully so, because they just lost their father in a very traumatic way, and they had to watch it happen. Like, it was right in front of them. I can't imagine them being comfy with the stuff that she was saying. So they all leave, and Eric has to go to work. And of course, Eric works at a tattoo parlor, because if you saw Eric, he is covered in tattoos and piercings, and I mean covered in them. So he does like complain about it to the customer whose tongue he's piercing. He complains about the fact that he has to work the day after his dad died, and like he has to close up shop the day after his dad died. Now, if you saw the teaser that released a few months ago, you've seen this scene. But I'm still going to describe it to you anyways. In this scene, Eric is kind of lamenting about the fact that he lost his dad. He puts on the song, I Can't Live If Living Was Without You. I think it's just called Without You, but he puts that song on, and he starts cleaning up the tattoo parlor. And in true Final Destination fashion, weird stuff starts happening. There's a bottle of like some form of like cleaner that falls over, flammable cleaner, of course. There's the chains that are connected to the ceiling fan start breaking, and like it's just everything's kind of going like, it's like all setting up for, this big moment. And Eric, for sure, as he was, like going around, he gets caught by his septum piercing and he's being lifted up into the air by the fan. It's because the chain is wrapping around the fan and he's being lifted up into the air. And as he's being lifted up into the air, the liquid sets on, like, lights on fire. Something falls into the liquid and it lights on fire. So he's now kind of like being spit roasted almost. And eventually he manages to unhook the chain from his septum without ripping it out, which I don't know how he did that. And he falls in the fire, and it's believed at that moment that he is now Death's second victim. Stephanie goes into Charlie's room the next day. She is panicked about Eric. She's like, he's not answering his phone. And then like Charlie's like, well, I haven't heard from him either. So they start going in there, walking, trying to figure things out, going to their cousin's house, and Charlie gets a text message that says the tattoo parlor burned down. So they're like, oh my God, Eric is dead. So they start rushing, and then Eric is there. And he's like, oh, hey, like, and they're like, the tattoo parlor lit on fire last night. And he's like, yeah, I know, I was there. And they're like, but you're here, and he's like, yeah, the firefighter said that if I wasn't wearing my leather jacket, then I wouldn't have survived. And they're like, oh, okay, so death didn't take you. Like, okay. So as they're, Stephanie's still trying to convince Eric that there's a lot of stuff that could happen. There's a few close calls that harken back to movies of previous movies. There's a part where a bus goes by, and we'll talk about that. And a bus goes by, and it gets really close to Eric. As he's walking, Stephanie describes a specific way that he could get killed. There are two kids playing on their driveway. There's and there's a guy with like a leaf blower, and he's doing, blowing the leaves in the yard. And she basically says, well, you could get killed by like the something hitting the guy with the leaf blower, the leaf blower blowing leaves into the kids' faces and them kicking the ball into your head. And Eric's like, a soccer ball to the head, that's really what's going to take me out. So then they get to the cousin's house, and Julia comes out, and she's getting ready to go on a run. And Eric is basically teasing Stephanie at this point. He is like, like, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to die. So like, and Julia's like, dude, you just need to drop it. Like, she's getting irritated with her. So Julia goes off and starts running, and Eric is just like, there's no, like, death isn't like stalking us. Like, we're fine. We're okay. As he says that, exactly what Stephanie said was going to happen happened. Something fell. The guy with the leaf blower freaked out, blew the leaves right into the kid's face, and they hit Julia in the head with a soccer ball. But that's not what killed her. She goes into a trash bin, and the garbage truck is right there. Picks up the trash, picks up the trash can and drops it into the compactor in the back. And so she's in the trash compactor now. The garbage will do. And now it's starting to slowly close in and compact the trash, and also Julia. The other three, Charlie, Stephanie, and Eric, are running after the truck, trying to get the truck's attention, but this guy is listening to Kelly Clarkson in his headset, and he needs Kelly's words today. He needed her, I guess, because he didn't even look. He didn't even, sense that there was somebody there. So they're banging on the windows, they're banging on the doors, but, he's just doing his job and listening to Kelly Clarkson. At one point, they do stop, and Stephanie climbs on top of the truck, and she reaches out to try to get Julia. She's holding Julia's hand, and she's trying to pull her out, but it's too late, and Julia gets crushed, and her face actually splits in half, and she dies. So at this point now, that specific family has had 2 casualties, and it's not looking too good. It's looking like the list is getting shorter and shorter every single day. So then their mom, the cousin's mom, Stephanie's aunt, explains, because Stephanie thinks she got the order wrong. She explains, no, you were right. It's just that I withheld some information from you guys. Howard wasn't Eric's real father. So Howard wasn't Eric's real father, and that's why he survived. Honestly, Death should have known that. Why did he have to lift him up by the septum piercing? He should have known that this kid wasn't related to Iris. So, yeah, so Eric is not Howard's son, so he is safe. He cannot die like in that way, or it's not his time yet. It'll get there eventually. But Julia was technically next after Howard, so she's gone, and now Bobby is the next one, and Bobby is terrified, rightfully so. I would be terrified too if you just lost your dad and your sister in these horrific random coincidences, and it really does seem like death is gunning for you. Then we end up with Tony Todd's last scene. So Stephanie had actually read in her grandma Iris's book that someone named JB knew somebody who survived. Like, they actually beat death, which we'll get to who that was in a minute. So they're like, who the heck is JB? And then Darlene, their mom, is like, I know who JB is. Let's go. So all five of them, so it's Darlene, Charlie, Stephanie, Eric, and Bobby, go to the hospital. Now, if you know anything about Final Destination, you know who's at the hospital. Tony Todd. Well, his character's name is JB. And they get there, and he's, in the corner. He says he's getting ready to retire. And he's like, oh, you're here because, death is stalking you. It's, of course it was. And then he says that, he was really good friends with Iris. And he said, she was one of his closest friends. And, she kept death at bay for him so he could, live his life. And you realize that JB is actually the little boy that she saved in her vision. He's actually the little boy. So this entire time, Tony Todd's character has been kind of a legacy character, even though he's like barely in any of the movies. He shows up for like one scene or two scenes, and he's like, peace afterwards, collects a check and leaves. So he says, now that Iris is gone, you guys are going to be taken out, and once you guys are gone, death is coming for me, and I want to enjoy the last few years I have on this earth. Like the last few days I have on this earth, I'm retiring, and he leaves. And it's kind of bittersweet, knowing that was Tony Todd's last movie and that he did die last year. It's kind of bittersweet, like, honestly. Hearing him say those words did kind of hit a little bit. And I hope he did enjoy the last few years he had on Earth, however long he was battling cancer. Like, I really hope he did have some good times. So that's what I gotta say about that. So after that, he does tell them a pivotal piece of information. Again, Final Destination lore. The only way to stop death from coming at you in a weird ass way is to either off someone or sacrifice yourself and be brought back. He says that Kimberly, who is the protagonist of the second movie, is the only one who has ever beaten death, because she died in the lake and she was brought back, and she ended it. But I mean, still kind of like that part did confuse me, because at the end of the second movie, the kid that tried to save the lady, I think her name was Kat, from getting impaled, that kid blew up. So, or no, I think his name was Rory, the stoner dude, grabbed the kid out of the way so he didn't get hit, and that kid blew up. So, I mean, maybe it's just because it skipped her and, the cop. I don't know. She technically shouldn't have skipped the cop, but whatever. So JB tells them those two things. He's like, kill or be killed, basically. And they're like, okay, well, Bobby, we're gonna have to figure something out. Darlene, Charlie, and Stephanie are absolutely against the idea of Bobby sacrificing his life for the line to end. But Eric is like, oh, come on, man, we got to do something. Bobby has a nut allergy, a severe nut allergy that can kill him. So they go to the vending machine in the hospital, and Eric goes to buy him regular peanuts, and Bobby's like, if I'm going to go out, I want, that. He points to peanut butter cups. So he buys him some peanut butter cups, but then they get stuck in the vending machine. So Eric goes behind the vending machine and starts pushing it, and Bobby's freaking out. He's like, you're going to knock it over. And he finally does shake the peanut butter cups out of its holder. However, the spring that was holding the peanut butter cups comes off the track. That's death setting something up. So then they end up going into a room with an MRI machine. At first, when they get in there, you don't really know what's in there. Eric goes to get a wheelchair, and that's when the MRI machine powers up. And you're like, okay, how are they going to make it? I mean, trust me, I'm afraid of MRI machines, but how are they going to make this scary, really? Like, how are they going to make that scary? So, how are they going to, kill with that, I guess? So then Eric comes back with a wheelchair because he wants to be able to wheel Bobby out of there so they can get help immediately. So Bobby sits down and he tells him to eat the peanut butter cup, and he eats the peanut butter cup, and at first nothing happens. And he's like, oh, maybe I don't have the allergy anymore. But then he starts to choke and his face starts swelling up, and it's like, it's really bad. So he keeps trying to get the EpiPen from Eric. He's panicking. He doesn't want to die. And Eric is backing up, taking the EpiPen away from him. But at the same time as he's doing all of that, the MRI machine is going to its maximum power. And you start to see everything magnetic in the hospital, like everything metal, flying towards the MRI room. So then, remember when I said that Eric is covered in piercings? Yeah, there's a reason why they tell you to take your piercings off when you go to get an MRI. There's a reason. He got all of his piercings pulled out, including one down south. That was, my jaw dropped a little bit there. So he got, everything, he pulled he got everything pulled out. It pulled him towards the MRI machine, and because it was trying to yank all of the metal off of his body, it ends up folding him in half. And I thought this was a really cool image because he apparently has a tattoo of a full skeleton face covering his entire chest. And as he is going, bending backwards, his ribs start breaking. And some of the original covers for Final Destination, or not original covers, but some of the covers for the most recent movies had a skull with stuff going through it. And I thought that was kind of cool that they did that. So he had the ribs breaking through the skull's face, and I thought that was cool how they did that. So he gets, broken in half, and Bobby then manages to get over to Eric's body because he's still holding the EpiPen, and he takes the EpiPen and he injects himself with it so he can survive. And then at that point in time, a nurse comes, she opens the door, she's like, what's going on in here? And he's like, and she asks him if he's okay, and he's like, yeah, I'm okay. And he's standing up. And at that moment, because she opened the door, the spring that had popped out on the vending machine flew off and impaled Bobby through the skull. So both Eric and Bobby were killed. Now I know what you might be thinking. If Eric isn't Howard's son, why did he die? He should have died that night in the fire. That's because death tries to kill people who interfere with his plan. So if you're not on the list, your time isn't coming, but you stop somebody else from dying, death is coming for you, basically. So even though Eric wasn't related to Iris, he interfered with Death's plan by trying to, he was trying to interfere with Death's plan by trying to bring Bobby back. So Death was just like, nah, I'm taking you, and I'm taking you in a really painful way. Yeah, that was brutal. So of course then Stephanie, Charlie, and Darlene realize what's going on, and they're like, oh shit, we're next, because that's the end of Howard's bloodline. Sorry. So Darlene is like, okay, I can't be around you guys because something bad is gonna happen, and I'll end up dying. So Stephanie's like, I don't want you to be alone, we can go to Grandma's cabin. So they decide to go to Grandma's cabin, and as they get there and they decide they're gonna bust through, and like I said, her cabin was rigged, it has all these spikes, all this stuff, but they bust through in the camper van, but Death is setting up its trap. At one point something falls and breaks Stephanie's seatbelt, so she won't be able to pull it out, unbuckle it. The plant that was getting set on fire, that was going to fall from the ceiling in Iris's cabin, the thing starts to ignite again because there's the sun is hitting it and the magnifying glass in the right way and it's burning it. Everything's getting set up. Death is like, okay. So they get there, and Stephanie is, tells Darlene to go, and Darlene and Charlie go to get inside of the cabin. And as soon as they go to get inside the cabin, Darlene notices that something is on fire, and she tells them to run. and the cabin explodes. And when the cabin explodes, the camper that Stephanie is still in, she's trapped in at that point, flips over and falls into a lake. And Stephanie is now drowning. So Charlie thinks that Darlene is dead, and he's trapped underneath a bunch of rubble, and he's freaking out. Darlene gets up. She's burned up, but she's still alive, and she helps him get out from under the rubble. And he's like, he's like all relieved. He's like, Mom, I'm so happy. And then she goes, well, you need to go save your sister. And she's like, don't worry, I don't plan on dying soon. And of course, in true Final Destination fashion, something falls and crushes her. Well, I'm saying that phrase a lot, but yeah, it falls and crushes her. So then Charlie's like, okay, well, there's nothing I can do about that. She's a pile of guts on the ground. So Charlie goes and jumps into the camper that's Stephanie's drowning in, and she is slowly drowning, starting to die. And he realizes he can't get the seatbelt off, so he takes a knife and he starts trying to cut it. And then finally, he eventually does get the seatbelt off, but it's too late. Stephanie is dead. However, he brings Stephanie back to life. She, gets up, she coughs all the water out, and they're like, it's over. It's over. It's done. And they're relieved. They're happy. They're like, oh, they're hugging, and they're like, we did it. We survived death. Your whole family got whacked, but you survived. So then after that, they fast forward to Charlie going to prom. He's going to pick up his date, Jenny, and, Stephanie and their dad are there, and, Stephanie's putting the boutonniere on his jacket, and she ends up poking herself, which is what Iris did in the dream when she put the boutonniere on Paul's jacket. So when she does that, she's kind of like, huh. So then Jenny's dad comes over, and he's a doctor. And so he goes, yeah, I heard you saved your sister's life. And he's like, yeah, I brought her back from the dead. And he's like, well, not really. And then she's like, what? And he's like, well, if he was able to resuscitate you and get you to cough the water up from your lungs, you didn't die. So at that moment, they both realize that they messed up. They messed up big time. And this is the part where I say death was at its pettiest, because oh my god, what death does to these two kids was so freaking petty. So the penny that the kid was throwing off the building, Stephanie had taken that penny, it fell in the hospital, and an elderly lady picked it up. The elderly lady goes to buy lemonade, and she drops the penny. The penny rolls all the way down and somehow lands in the train tracks, stopping it from being able to switch, so the track couldn't switch. So the train's careening down the track, and it hits the unswitched track, and the train flies off the track, goes into this residential neighborhood, destroys all these homes in the process, trying to kill these two kids. So these two kids so Charlie and Stephanie are running, trying to get away from the train. The train's just destroying everything, probably killed everybody in that neighborhood at the same time just to get to these two kids. Finally, the train loses its momentum, it stops, and Stephanie and Charlie are like, wow, we got away from that. We did it. As they say that, they look up, and here comes logs. If you know Final Destination, you know logs are iconic. That's like the symbol of Final Destination. So the logs are coming down, the two of them start running, but it's too late. They both die by being crushed by logs. And that's the end of Final Destination Bloodlines. Death was so petty, so freaking petty at the end of that movie. He was just like, you are going to die whether you like it or not. And I'm taking everyone in this neighborhood with me. So yeah, that ending was crazy. So all in all, I thought it was a pretty good movie. I thought it was a pretty decent Final Destination movie. They're not necessarily the pinnacle of cinema. It's one of those things where it's like, if you go in expecting it to be like a freaking life-changing movie like Sinners, I'm always going to bring up Sinners now, but if you expect it to go be a life-changing movie, like a life-altering movie, you are going to be disappointed. It's a Final Destination movie. It's like going to see Friday the 13th, or, it's like going to see Friday the 13th. Is it a little bit corny? Yes, it's always going to be corny, because Final Destination is corny. However, I will say this. They did a lot of really good work with the lore. If I'm correct, connecting all of the movies to this one incident that Iris, stopped from happening is genius. It's absolutely genius. If that's what actually happened, I don't know. I could be talking out of my ass right now. And to be quite honest, like, it was better written and better acted than some of the previous movies. And the characters weren't entirely unlikable like some of the previous movies. They weren't, I didn't love them, but they weren't like, it wasn't like you were sitting there going, oh my God, I can't wait for you to die. I can't wait. Like there were some characters in the other movies where I was like, all right, when are they going to die? When and how? I do think the deaths were very over the top in this movie. They were very, crazy, unrealistic, but that's kind of the fun of Final Destination. It's kind of like the original Saw. The first Saw movie was, grounded, realistic, but then as the series progressed, it was how crazy can we make these traps? What can we do to the human body? So, and that's kind of, like I said, that's kind of like how I feel the Final Destination movies, where they started pretty grounded, pretty realistic, and then it got to a point where I was like, how crazy can we make this? Like, how crazy can we really make this? Okay, we'll do all these fun things. So, Bloodlines was enjoyable. If I were to give it a skull rating, I would give it a 3.5 out of 5 skulls. It's not bad. It's not a movie that I would revisit. Because I'm going to tell you right now, before we get into my conversation about all of the movies, which is going to be just me going through my feelings on each one, kind of, we'll get to it. I think I found something that actually scares me. So, I don't scare easily. I startle easily, but I don't scare easily. I don't have anything that keeps me on edge and makes me leave the theater kind of looking around and, and like, or feeling anxious, coming home and worrying about certain things. As somebody with severe anxiety, the Final Destination movies are my personal hell. I'm not even trying to be dramatic. They are my personal hell. It is nothing but anxiety. The whole franchise is nothing but anxiety. The way that each scenario is set up, it hyper focuses on all the different ways that you can die. And yes, they're over the top, they're ridiculous, they're very, very unlikely to happen, but it made me, I won't say it makes you, I'm not going to speak for y'all. It made me stop and think about how there are a lot of ways that you can die in so super innocuous ways. There's the obvious ways. Obviously, getting on a plane, the plane could crash. Getting on a train, the train could crash. Getting in a car, the car could crash. There's risks that you take, in your life that you might die. But then there's those moments where you're just minding your own business and you slip and fall and crack your head on something, and that's the end of your life. And it makes me so anxious. The movies themselves are not scary. I find myself laughing at some of the over the top deaths. So the movies aren't necessarily like, oh my God, I can't watch this. Like, I can't watch, but it's the overall thought of how many different ways life can take you and you won't even see it coming. It'll just happen. That to me is what makes these movies terrifying. And it might be the scariest movies that I have ever seen, like the scariest set of movies I've ever seen, because when you have anxiety and you're already somewhat paranoid about a lot of things and you're always kind of checking things, yeah, no, this movie is my nightmare. These movies are my nightmare. I've said to a couple of my friends that I'm ready to put this series behind me. So once I'm done editing this video, I am probably never going to watch Final Destination again. I quickly remembered after watching the first one why I did not watch past the third one, really. I saw like bits and pieces of the fourth and the fifth one, but I quickly remembered why I didn't like that franchise. And it's not because in and of itself it's bad. There are some stinkers in this franchise, but overall, it's a pretty decent movie. It goes by so fast, which I love. Like, in the age of every movie being like 2 to 3 hours long these days, it's nice to have a movie that just is like, all right, let's go. Let's go. Even the Scream movies, the recent Scream movies were like 2 hours long, but I think the original Scream was about 2 hours as well. So, and don't get me wrong, I love story-heavy, lore-rich movies. Obviously, Sinners is the movie of the year for me, and that was very story-heavy and very lore-rich. But this was kind of fun just to get through it, watch a bunch of people die in crazy ways. But it also was very anxiety-inducing. I was cringing through the entire opening sequence of Bloodlines. I was hiding my face, and I even did it here at home. Like, I was like on my computer, I was at work, and I had the movie playing in the background, and every single time I would turn, I would be like, oh, I can't watch what's going to happen to this person. Like, I can watch, but I can't watch. I can watch, but I can't watch. And there's certain death scenes that did get to me, and we'll talk about that. So overall, like, the franchise isn't magnificent. It's not life changing, but for me, it is terrifying. It might be the scariest series that I have ever seen, simply because I think about stuff like that too much. And that's not, it's not good for people like me. It's not a good movie for people like me. When that's already a constant thought in your brain, you're already like, what if I trip down the stairs and my head, like I hit my head or something like that. You know, walking across the street, I have those thoughts all the time. Like, what if somebody just came out of nowhere and hit me? Like, that is how my brain works. And so this movie is this franchise is my personal hell. So thank you. You did a great job with Bloodlines. I will not be revisiting this series anytime soon. No, I'm so good. I'm so good. But now to talk about the series overall. Now we're not going to go deep into every single movie. I'm going to go make this kind of fun. We're going to talk about my favorite deaths in each movie, one death per movie. We're going to talk about my favorite opening disaster, ranking them from the scariest to the most obnoxious. And then we're going to go from my least favorite movie to my favorite movie in the franchise, which ones I think are like worth it. So, without further ado, let's start with Final Destination, the original movie that started the franchise. The death that I would say is my favorite is the death of Terry, and it's because of the simplicity of it and the comedic timing of it. If you've seen the movie, you know that Terry is, you know, one of the people who was supposed to die on the plane, and she gets mad at her boyfriend for constantly trying to fight Alex, who's the main character. And she finally just snaps at him one day, and she's like, you know what? If this is how it's going to be, then you can just drop dead. And then she gets hit by a bus. So, yeah, the comedic timing on that was impeccable. Loved the comedic timing on that. That was probably that one always has me laughing because it's very Tom and Jerry except with gore. Like, just get beamed by a bus, you know. So that's my favorite death in Final Destination. In Final Destination 2, this is one of my favorite deaths in the entire franchise. It is the pigeons. Now, there's a mom and son, Nora and Tim, who are at the dentist. And while they're at the dentist, death is really trying to get to both of them, but they somehow keep evading it. When they come out and Kimberly's there trying to tell them that they're about to die, Tim turns around and decides he's going to start scaring some pigeons away. He scares some pigeons away. They fly up and hit a group of construction workers that are like, you know, they are lifting up a piece of glass with, like, you know, their machinery. And when they hit the construction worker, he hits the button, it swings around, and it just smashes Tim. And the reason why that death is so funny to me, and it's my favorite death in the whole series, is because you can see the moment it becomes a dummy. The way his body just folds, you can see the moment that he becomes a dummy. And I think that's hilarious. It is so, and it's so abrupt, and it's so random, and it's so over the top. Like, at least with the death, the you should drop death, like, that's something that could definitely happen. You could walk in the road and just, someone doesn't even see you walk in the road, which is very sad, but, you know, it's happened. This is so unlikely. This is kind of like that specific death was kind of when I was like, okay, yeah, this franchise has gone silly. Like, it's gone silly with this. So that one's my favorite in the second movie. Now, in the third movie, we're going to take a little bit of a turn because this one's not my favorite because it's funny. This was my favorite because it scares the absolute shit out of me. And that's the tanning bed death. Now, I'm sure if you know anything about Final Destination, this is probably one of the most iconic deaths in the entire series. Two girls go tanning before they go to their graduation, and they get into the tanning beds, and they set it for a low temperature, and they're in the tanning beds. As they're in the tanning beds, a shelf falls and basically like lands on top of both beds so that they can't open it, and then the temperature just starts increasing and increasing. And these two girls are trapped in a very tiny tanning bed being burned alive. And that death scares me so much. That death scene scares me so much because I'm claustrophobic. I don't like small spaces. I'm saying all this. It's like I'm not scared of anything. I'm scared of everything. But yeah, like I'm claustrophobic, and just the idea of being trapped in a small box and then being lit on fire. No, no, it's very scary, very scary. So, the tanning bed is the best kill from the third movie. The fourth movie is probably another one that you've heard about. It is the disemboweling scene. And this scene is very creative. And I think I would mark it very high up for creativity because wow, like who even thinks of this? So there's a character, I don't remember his name. I think it's Hunt. I think that's his name. He just he is at the pool. He's trying to enjoy his last few hours on Earth or whatever. But then at one point, a person hits a golf ball and it knocks his glass over, which knocks his lucky coin into the pool. He goes into the pool after the coin, and when he goes, he gets close to a drain. The drain is on, and it sucks his butt to the drain. And he's standing there. He's sitting there, and he's trying to get out, but he can't like release the suction. And you see the pump where the water's supposed to drain from. And eventually, after a while, that pump just explodes with blood and entrails because the pump just sucked all his organs out from his butt. So, a creative kill scene. Very disgusting thinking of every single organ just being pulled out of your ass. Oh, painful. So, for the fifth movie, I loved this specific death because it was so different from all of the other ones, and it was so grounded and realistic. In this one, the character of Peter, who was one of the characters who was supposed to die, he's still reeling over his girlfriend dying in a tragic gymnastics accident, which was wild. He was basically reeling from that. And what happens is that in Sam, the main character's vision, he saw everybody die but his girlfriend Molly. So he believes that Molly is the only person who is safe, basically. So then when he tells Peter this, Peter is like, okay, so we have to kill somebody to get their years. And he's like, how come, Candace had to die? How come Dennis had to die? And he's like, and how come you get to live, Molly? And he pulls out a pew pew. Pew pew. And the reason why this was cool was because it was grounded in reality. And he's basically chasing Molly through the kitchen of the restaurant, firing at her. And then eventually the cop shows up that's been tailing them the whole time. And Peter just blows the cop away. And he's like, okay, I got his hours, I got his years. And then Molly's like, okay, well, you killed him. Everything's good. And he's like, but you witnessed it. And he's like, and I'm not going to spend the years that I just earned in a jail cell, rotting in a jail cell. So he's still going to kill Molly, despite the fact that now, technically, it's Sam's turn. Sam's going to die next. He's still going to kill Molly. It ends up into a fist fight. It's chase. The three of them are fighting each other. Finally, Molly ends up in a corner. She's backed up and he goes to kill her. And then Sam just stabs him through the chest. And he gets skipped because of that, because he did that. And, he's like, okay, everything is good. It was cool to see that in a Final Destination movie because I kept thinking in the back of my mind, how come they never went that angle? Not necessarily the murder angle, but something more grounded, because some of the deaths are ridiculous and over the top and they're just too much. But that was really cool, seeing an actual struggle, a fight, and then seeing them basically mess with the order. So yeah, that one, definitely cool. And finally, for the sixth movie, you should know what I was going to say, the MRI scene. Watching that man get folded was horrific. And yeah, no, I that was a good scene. I'm not going to explain it because I already explained it, so I'm not going to explain it again. But yeah, the MRI scene is that's the best scene. We are now going to move on to favorite opening disaster. Like I said before, every single Final Destination movie opens with a disaster of biblical proportions almost. And every single one gets more and more over the top. So I'm actually going to go in reverse. I did this from my most favorite to my least favorite, but I'm going to go in reverse. So my least favorite opening disaster is Devil's Flight. And Devil's Flight is the third Final Destination, which is the roller coaster crash. The reason why it's my least favorite is because I love roller coasters so much, and that is literally a thought I have every single time I go on a roller coaster. I literally constantly have to tell myself this is not going to be my day. So you can imagine how terrified I was when I got stuck on Tron. Yeah, I was terrified. Oh my god, that was that was so scary. I was like, wow, this is it for me, huh? This is it. I mean, granted, yes, we were stuck on a brake run, and we were safe and we were secure, but again, we were also up high. And the platform shook when they were walking on it. So I was scared that I was about to have my Final Destination moment. I was scared that I was about to have my Final Destination moment. Obviously, I'm still here. So either I cheated death or that wasn't my time. But yeah, I couldn't even watch that scene when I was watching the movie. I had to look away because I'm like, just something about it, just like, I just don't want to see something that I always think about, which is really funny because my most favorite is another thing that I always think about, but I think it was done so well that I have to make it my most favorite. My second least favorite one is the NASCAR race. That one is just zany. It is so over the top, ridiculous, weird, zany. Like, like, don't get me wrong. NASCAR drivers do crash. Bad things happen at NASCAR tracks, but this was just over the top. It is so ridiculous. And honestly, it's fitting for the fourth movie because the fourth movie is ridiculous. Like, it is ridiculous. It's clownery, in my opinion, the fourth movie. Anyways, the racetrack was just, it was over the top. It was too much for me in a lot of ways. So, yeah, the racetrack, I just wasn't really a big fan of that one. It was just too silly. I keep saying that. I'm sorry. Number 4, my third, like the middle, where we call this the mid tier, the bridge from Final Destination 5. It is equally as over the top as the NASCAR races, but somehow less over the top than any of the other ones. There's not a lot of gore, and not a lot of like there's a lot of scary stuff that happens, but there's not a lot of gore, and there's not a lot of there's not a lot of characters that are offed, and you don't even see most of the characters that get offed. But it is zany, because not to say that bridges don't collapse. Bridges do collapse. We've had plenty of that happen in the last few years. Not to say that that doesn't happen, but the way it happens is very, very over the top. And yeah, I mean, it's a good opening because I personally don't like driving over bridges, especially the Skyway Bridge. I'm going to insert a picture of that right here. If you've never been to St. Pete, that's what you have to drive over to get to it. So, and I've driven over it twice myself, and I hate it. I hate everything about it. It is the scariest thing that I've ever driven on. Scariest thing. But yeah, so the bridges can collapse, but this one just wasn't like too over the top. It was like realistic, but not realistic. And it was kind of just all over the place. Number 3, another one that's in the mid-tier, is the interstate pileup. And I don't really think this is mid-tier, because I think the interstate pileup is the most iconic scene in Final Destination history. So much so that an entire generation, maybe even 2 generations, like Gen X and millennials, will not drive behind trucks that have logs on them. For the longest time, I thought I was the only one that would not drive behind a truck that had logs on it. And it wasn't really until social media kicked up and people were like, every time I drive behind a truck with logs, I see this, and they put the picture from Final Destination. I'm like, oh, thank you. Those things are terrifying. Those things are terrifying. So, and the log has, like I said, the logs have kind of become the unofficial icon for Final Destination, because at the end of Final Destination Bloodlines, the kids get crushed with logs. And I really think that was more of like a cheeky sort of thing, like from the writers and directors, like, yeah, we're going to have them get crushed by logs because, you know, everybody loves the logs. Even it was even advertised on trucks, like I guess you could say like delivery trucks, where the trucks had a wrap around it that looked like the logs. So the logs are very, very famous. So, I mean, when I put it at number 3, it's only because, and it used to be my number 2, it's only because the next one is just so much better. But this one is definitely iconic. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. It is still one of the gnarliest opening scenes. And the logs. That's all I'm going to say is the logs. Number 2, this is the one that pushed the pile up down. The Skyview restaurant. Like I said, when I was reviewing Bloodlines, that was my personal nightmare. Watching that entire sequence had me on edge. My stomach was in knots, and I was like curled up in a little ball in my seat because the movie theater that I usually go to with my friends, it has recliner seats. So we were reclined in the seats, and I was just literally curled up in a ball. I was like, nope, nope, nope. I was so scared. I was actually scared of that one, and I hated everything about it. So Skyview Restaurant is number 2. And number 1, Flight 180. Nothing can top that plane crash scene. I remember when I said that the roller coaster thing is something I think about all the time. The plane is also something I think about all the time when I've gone on planes. And the last time I went on a plane, little tidbit, we hit major turbulence, and we like dropped a few feet. Everybody says that happens, that's normal, but I was so scared, and thankfully we were close to our destination when it happened. Like we were close to the airport, like not the airport, but like we were close to the city I was landing in, thankfully, because if we had not been close to the city that we was landing in, I don't know if I would have survived that flight. Like that's the only thing that holds me back from traveling overseas, is that I know I'm going to have to get on a plane, and I don't like flying. I don't like flying. No, I just don't like, and this movie is why. This movie is why. That was never something that occurred to me. Watching it happen on the inside and seeing what it would possibly feel like to be in a plane crash. No, no, Flight 180 is still the scariest opening. So much so that when I actually was watching the original Final Destination yesterday, I felt like I was going to throw up watching that scene. Like, I don't get sick very easily. I actually felt nauseous. I was like, this is terrifying. This is so scary, and I hate it, and I wish it would stop. please just stop. I just can't. I can't. So those are my favorite opening disasters, least to most favorite. And now we're going to do that with the movies. So this is going to be really quick. We're just going to go through this. So we're going to start with my least favorite movie of the franchise, The Final Destination, otherwise known as Final Destination 4. Final Destination 4 is absolute trash in my opinion. I hate most of the characters. I think that they are weird and gross, and like I don't know, like they're not gross, but they're just like weird, and I just don't like them. I just don't like them. The constant trickery of like the ending, like, you know, like them doing like the double ending where he sees the fire in the mall and then he goes and he stops it, like that. I hated that. It, like, yeah, I mean, applause for creativity, but I hated that. The movie just felt bad. It just felt really bad. And I think it's like, because I think there's 2 reasons. A, it had that zany ass opening, that freaking Tom and Jerry-esque opening. And B, because of the fact that they were filming this in 3D, they were so focused more on the effects and how they could scare you with things coming at you than they were like actually making a good story. I just wasn't into the story. I wasn't into the characters. It was the weakest one in my opinion. Right after that would be Final Destination 3. Now, Final Destination 3 was boring. I don't know how a Final Destination movie could be boring, but it was boring. And that's really sad because Mary Elizabeth Winstead is like my girl. Like, I love Scott Pilgrim, and she's Ramona Flowers. So like, she's my girl. She's my homie. She's my, like, I love her. Most of the stuff she's been in, I love. I don't like this movie. I hate this movie. The only thing I will say I do like about this movie is the ending. I do think the ending is very cool, where she has the premonition again, and then ends up dying in the crash anyways. I thought that was really, really well done. That's why I think I didn't like Final Destination 4's thing, because I was like, yeah, okay, he saved the day again, but like, does that matter? Like, does that really matter at the end of the day? So, yeah, Final Destination 3 was just boring, and again, extremely unlikable characters. Some of the death scenes were kind of stupid and like corny, even though it does have, in my opinion, the scariest death in the entire franchise, which is the tanning bed death. Yeah, it's not that good of a movie. It's just very boring. Number three, in mid tier, I would say that it would be Final Destination 5. Now, let me just be so frank. I actually think this is a pretty good movie. I feel like this movie gets a lot of hate. Final Destination 5 gets a lot of hate. I don't know why. It is a real, to me, it was a really good movie. It was a good cap to the end of the series, and I kind of wish that that was the end. Even though Bloodlines was good, but I kind of wish that was the end, because you could tell that they were like planning this to be the end of the series, and then like somebody was like, hey, what if we made another Final Destination? Like, what if we did that? So that the Final Destination 5, though, it was pretty good. Like I said, it veered off by having that gunfight at the end. It definitely veered off. It had somewhat likable characters. It did have some unlikable characters, but like, I mean, maybe like one unlikable character. They had more creative deaths, in my opinion. I feel like they had to have more creative deaths. They had the gymnast getting folded. They had the LASIK eye surgery where she burns her eye and then falls out of a window. So there's some good moments in Final Destination 5. I don't think it deserves all the hate that it gets, and especially because the ending of that movie is freaking phenomenal. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to say, if you haven't seen Final Destination 5, go watch it. If you've seen the other ones but you haven't seen the fifth one, go watch it. Because the ending of that movie was very good. Very good. I loved it. Loved everything. Now we're on to my top three. My coming in at number three, we have Final Destination 2. Now, this movie is equally as zany as the fourth one, but it has a certain charm about it. I think it's because of how over the top everything is, and it just doesn't seem to be taking itself super seriously. It's fun. It's a fun movie to watch. Like, Final Destination 4 was trying too hard to be like edgy, like, 2000s teens, 2010 teens. Like, I think that movie came out in 2009, so it was like that era where like everything was really edgy. Like, you had the Friday the 13th remake, which was like filled with like annoying ass characters, even more so than the original movies. You had Nightmare on Elm Street that came out like the year later. That it was that era where everything had to be like super edgy and cool. So it didn't translate well. But Final Destination 2, it was almost like they were like, okay, Final Destination was a good movie and people really liked it. It really did scare them. But Final Destination 2 is like, this is just a chop shop. We're just gonna see how many different ways we can kill these people. And it just seemed like they were having fun with it. Whoever wrote the movie, it seemed like they were having fun with the story that they were creating. So it's zany, it's stupid, it's totally everything in that movie is completely unbelievable, but it's a fun watch. And that used to actually be my favorite of the series. That one used to be my favorite of the series when I was younger. I used to watch Final Destination 2 quite a bit because it was so over the top and unrealistic. Coming in at number 2, Final Destination Bloodlines. This is the second time that a rebooted franchise has taken a coveted spot. Scream was the first one. It was Scream 6. That one went to number 2 for me, and it's still, to this day, it's still my second favorite Scream movie. This one was the same thing. This movie was really good, and it balanced not taking itself seriously with also trying to take itself seriously very well. It didn't get too serious, and it didn't get too stupid, except for the last shot of the movie, which was definitely just a nod and a wink at the fans that love the franchise, which I think is fine. That's fine. That's cute. I laughed my ass off when I saw that part. But yeah, no, this movie was really enjoyable. Very creative deaths. I love the fact that there's a lot of lore in this, and I love the fact that there's a possibility that this connects everything. And if that's the case, that is some good story writing, in my opinion. So, Final Destination Bloodlines, very good movie. Enjoyed it. And of course, number one, Final Destination. Final Destination is the only movie in this entire franchise, the first movie, that actually feels like they were trying to scare you. It actually feels like you can actually feel the tension. Even still to this day, this movie came out in 2000. It still holds up. It still feels like like very tense and very like anxiety inducing. It did take itself very seriously, considering some of the quirky deaths that they had. It did take itself very seriously, but it kind of worked for this movie because also it was released kind of on the heels of movies like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream. It had to kind of stand out in its own way, and I think it really did. It was still a teen like horror movie, but it differentiated itself from the typical teen horror movies that we're used to seeing. So Final Destination still holds up. You know, it's been what, 20 years now since that movie's come out? It's 25 years, I think, this year of Final Destination, which is very scary to think of. Time is an illusion. I say that a lot, but time is an illusion. It still holds up 25 years later. It really does. And I'm glad I revisited it, at least for the sake of just seeing it from adult eyes. Because when I first saw that movie, I was in high school. So seeing it from adult eyes and understanding it a little bit better than I did when I was a kid. Final Destination still holds up, you know, more than 2 decades later. Like, more than 2 decades later, it still holds up. So that is everything that I have to say about Final Destination. I yapped a lot, as I always do. Overall, this series is campy. It's silly. It's like gruesome. It's kind of fun to watch, but it's also terrifying because it really does make you think that at any point in time, you know, death can come for you. And it's a scary thought to have. So I'm going to leave it on a positive note here. Enjoy your life. Enjoy your life. Do what you want to do. Have fun. If you want to buy a cookie, go buy a cookie. If you want to go, swimming, go swimming. Because none of us know how much time we have left. None of us know when the Grim Reaper is going to come and get us. And kind of interestingly enough, my whole philosophy for 2025 has been to just enjoy my life as best as I can and find the joy when I can. Not force myself to feel happy, but find the joy where I can. And that's been helpful because it has been a rough year, and not necessarily personally for me. Yeah, there's been a couple of rough stuff, but just in the world in general, it's been a rough year, and it's probably only going to get like rougher and rougher as time goes on. But I have my friends, I have my family, I have like things that I look forward to, I have, music that I love, movies that I love. And if anything, this movie did put that perspective in my head where after I finished watching it, I kind of stopped and thought to myself, the whole moral of the story for me in what I took away from the Final Destination movies is you don't know when that time is going to come and you can't stop it. It'll come when it's ready. And hopefully you will have lived a full, wonderful life. Or you might be talking to your jerky boyfriend and walk in the middle of the road and get hit by a bus. But in any case, just enjoy your life because you really don't know how much time you have left. So that's what I'm doing in 2025. I hope that's what you're trying to do in 2025. I know it's a hard year for everybody. I really wish everybody as much peace as you can get in like the world right now. And I hope you're grabbing at those moments when you can. So that's all I have to say about that. Final Destination is fun. I won't be watching these movies again. That they're off the table for me. Too much anxiety for that, but still fun time. Not as bad as I remember most of them. The fourth one still sucks, but not as bad as I remember for the most of them. I do see the charm and I do see why it has had such a strong fan base over the years. That's pretty much it for Final Destination. So thank you so much for joining me again tonight and listening to me yap. If you want to see me yap more, I have been posting a little bit more on TikTok. I have Threads, and I also have Instagram and Blue Sky, but I barely use Blue Sky because I don't know, it's not my thing, it's not my cup of tea. But I'm at Creepy Critiques on all of those platforms, so you can go check me out over there, posting more frequently. The next video that we're gonna have, I cannot make any promises. I can't make any promises, because the plan for the next video is Poppy Playtime Chapter 2. That's the plan. I have to test the game and make sure that I can record while playing the game. I'm not going to play the game, but I just want to see if I can get into the game and move around, like move back and forth. And if I can do that, then we're golden, baby. We're gonna do Poppy Playtime Chapter 2. So we're gonna get to that game, and then possibly, well, I do have to wrap up Yellow Jackets Season 3. I haven't even started it yet. I will start it. Last of Us is ending this weekend, so I will be doing my final Last of Us video and my final Last of Us review. It's been a crazy fun month, honestly, and I'm looking forward to more and more of this type of content, and there's a lot of great horror stuff that's coming out, and I am absolutely ready to consume that when the time comes. So again, thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, subscribe, share it with a friend, leave a comment down below. Anything you do lets me know that you liked what you just saw. I will see you guys in my next video. Hopefully it'll be Poppy Playtime Chapter 2, fingers crossed, or maybe it'll be The Last of Us and then Poppy Playtime Chapter 2, so be on the lookout for that. Everybody stay safe. Look both ways before crossing the road. Make sure you don't put any water or chemicals near electrical outlets, and above all else, just enjoy your life. And I will see you all next time with another creepy critique.